In the past, 10 or so video chats, I've talked about the benefit of asking certain questions before we try to solve a problem, before we try to do, frankly, anything. Like, what would it be like here in this situation with this person, in this interaction, if you were loving? And how would that change the world around you? Do you want to add love to this situation, or do you want to add fear? Or anger is the fuel of every conflict, while love is the seed of joy. Will you add fuel to the fire, or will you plant the seeds of life? I'm going to suggest another, meme, I suppose. I'm old enough that I don't really know what I'm saying when I say meme, but something that helps us remember a pattern. And it's, I choose to be loving because. We're going to be doing that during the video chats. We're going to be doing it on autoresponders. We're going to be putting them on the websites as blogs. We're going to be using it in a lot of ways. I choose to be loving because I was loved. I choose to be loving because it works. I choose to be loving because I'm happier when I'm loving. I choose to be loving because it changes the world around me. I choose to be loving because I can. We'll be talking more and more about this. First email from Sarah. She says, I've always been confused about how we could not have needs of other people. How is it that we could interact with other people and not expect something from them? Needs and expectations, it turns out, are fine. I mean, we need to eat. We need air. We have a right to expect air to breathe. We have a right to expect as infants that we'll be fed and clothed and housed and so on. Needs and expectations, in other words, are fine of life. In fact, we have a need to be loved, and we have a right to expect to be loved because there's an infinite flow of it in the universe. But it gets really problematic. It gets really dangerous when we heap our needs and expectations on individual people, which would take from them their right to choose, which is the most important principle of all. No kidding. Sarah says, continues, I'm in a partnership, so there's no way that we're coming into this not needing anything from each other. You're right. Hence the confusion of partnership. Partners are closer to us. So it's natural when we become needy, what do? We heap our needs on them. It's almost unavoidable unless you're completely full yourself from your association with friends, parents, wise people, coaches, God. Unless you're full, you will have expectations of the people who are closest, and partners are pretty close. And then remember, there was that day where you stood in front of everybody and you said, I marry you because you're going to satisfy my needs for the rest of my life. We weren't aware we said that, but we did. And we do need some things from our partners, which makes it even more confusing. We need sex from our partners. Where else are we going to get it? So it kind of puts them in a position where we need them. We need companionship. We need the sharing of funds if we're both working and earning. We need the sharing of childcare. We need shared transportation. It sort of goes on and on with partnership. And so, yes, it does become confusing with partners because there are certain needs and expectations that are unavoidable. Where we really screw up is where we demand, need, expect love from our partners. Yeah, we need it, but as soon as we expect it from one person, we're already on the slippery slope. We're already sliding into the hole. Sarah says, it almost doesn't make sense to not need something from your partner. I've been agreeing with you, of course. And it's okay to need something from your partner. Hello, it's a partnership. Why else would you be in it? It makes partnerships different. We just need to keep our needs to a minimum. We need to keep them clear, or our partner becomes a slave. If you turn to your partner every single time you need something and say, well, you're my partner and I need it, and so you have to give it to me, your partner becomes pretty much a non-person. And when needs turn into expectations, well, the problems explode. She continues, I think I was confused because I really didn't need anything from my partner at the start because I felt so loved by you, she's talking to me, and other real love people, and I felt full of that love. I get it. And it's okay that you need something from him now. But when it turns into an expectation or demand, he's going to feel it and he's not going to like it. And you're not going to like the result. Illustration. I need Donna. I do. I personally need Donna a lot every day for a lot of things. But I'm at least aware, it's not cautious, of not heaping too many expectations on her, or then it's difficult for her to freely give. It's difficult for me to feel like I'm freely receiving when I heap expectations. That's just an illustration, a personal one. Let me make this even easier. I need food. Everybody needs food, but I don't expect you to feed me. And as soon as I do, we got a problem, because what if you don't feel like feeding me? What if you don't have food? What if you don't want to? Needs and expectations, we've got to see the difference. Sarah continues, seems like sometimes I find it way easier just to be, well, alone instead of being in a partnership. Well, yeah, sometimes you do find it easier to be alone because of the expectations, not because of your partner. The expectations are the drag. I need Donna's companionship. I like it, but I don't demand it. Instead, hang on, slow way down and listen to this word. Instead of expecting it and demanding it, I enjoy it. I'm grateful for it. Enjoy and grateful beat the trash out of need and expect. Enjoy, not demand. I promise the more you enjoy your partner and are grateful for him, the more the expectations disappear. It's pretty easy to illustrate. If I expect something from you and I demand something from you, I watch couples do this every day on Skype as I talk to them. I just got off the phone with a couple and he demands a certain behavior from her. If she gives it to him, he writes it off as a 0. No kidding. He just goes, well, so she finally gave me what I've expected. If she doesn't, it's a -1,000. So all she does is accumulate -thousands all day long. He's not grateful for her, not at all. He doesn't enjoy her. At one point in the conversation, on her own, she did something that was really sweet and vulnerable and kind that he'd been demanding for the longest time, but he didn't demand it in this conversation. She offered it. And as she offered it, I looked at him and he felt nothing. Nothing. No gratitude, didn't enjoy it. He just counted it as 0. And I pointed it out to him that she had just given him exactly what he'd wanted. And his comment was, well, I'm not sure she meant it. Whoa, what a disaster expectations have been for these two. His expectations are so high, she will never meet them. And unless he learns to change that and enjoy her, his expectations will kill his marriage. Sarah concludes, so I feel like my partner needs a ton from me, needs my attention, my affection, sexual intimacy, love, reassurance, so on. Yeah. And he has to learn to, even though he likes those things, needs those things, not to expect it. And you have to not feel obligated, because if you give when you feel obligated, you're going to hate it. He's going to know that you hate it. Everybody loses it. So enjoy, honey. Enjoy your partner. And as you do that and you're grateful for him, everything's just going to seem so much happier, even if nothing changes. You become happier just because you decided to enjoy. New subject. A woman in real love sent me a note about her boyfriend, who from the beginning had experienced difficulties in their relationship because of his lack of self-worth. She's been trying to share real love with him, but it's been understandably difficult. That's tough to do with somebody who has no sense of self-worth, because it just like rolls off them like water off a duck. She said this: his dad died when he was a young teenager. One prominent memory he has, along with others in his family, is from when he was a little boy. His dad always said, "Time is valuable. Time is money." Whew. How many times have we heard that expression on television, in person, in our families? His dad was always busy either working to make money or doing what he called church stuff, service administration. I'm not really sure. Probably, if I remember, a lay volunteer in his church. So one day the boy brought all of his savings, which was just a few dollars, to his dad. And he said, "Dad, I'd like to buy an hour of your time, just so I can be with you and spend some time with my dad." That just kind of breaks your heart, doesn't it? Time is money. So here's a little boy wanting to buy his dad's time. And almost all of us do that. We buy our parents' time, approval, affection, our spouses, partners' time, approval, affection, by giving them perhaps not money, but something. Approval, power, sex, affection. It's just one great big trading festival, or actually in this case, trading carnage. It's breathtaking. This is what I mean when I say children need love like air. They'll do anything to get it, anything. Without it, they die. Without it, they respond in unproductive ways. Here, this kid has been looking for love in various ways all his life because of what he didn't get when he was a child. He's having difficulties in his relationship with his partner now because he had to buy his father's time when he was a little kid. He's had no successful relationships at all. Not with girlfriends, not with boyfriends, not with anybody. So when the boy made the offer to his dad, "Could I buy some time?" his dad got angry and stomped out of the room. Wow. What kind of utter emotional handicap would you have to be suffering that you would stomp out of the room when your little boy comes and, with tears in his eyes, begs you for your time? The father's just a cripple. He's not a monster. This boy has to be hurting inside. I hope he gets over this stage of being defensive so he can heal and learn to be an incredible husband and father. The possibility exists, but he'd have to choose to learn. He'd have to be willing to be vulnerable and accept it. Now we'll see if you can make a difference in his life and introduce real love into it. New subject. This is from a mother who's had many years of difficult relationships with her teenage daughter, Ellen. Cursing, rebellion, refusing to go to school, so on. The mother learned to love and teach. The child has suddenly become a miracle baby. He's a teenage kid. Grades up, cooperation, tone, everything. The mother writes, "Ellen was talking to me about something today, and I had a strong opinion about it, so I cut her off in mid-sentence and just stated my opinion. Our relationship is strong enough now that she tilted her head, raised an eyebrow, and without saying any words, gave me the, 'What are you doing?' look, like, 'What's this?' You've seen kids do that. Is there something wrong with you?" This is such a great story. It's priceless that this kid, after all of the loving that you've given her, didn't blow up or argue or anything. She just looked at you quizzically like, "Are you going to figure out what you just did with me?" That's really sweet. It was actually loving, the kind of loving parents need to do more with their kids. Just let him figure it out instead of being snotty. Mother continues, I immediately said, I cut you off in mid-sentence. I'm sorry, honey. Go ahead and finish your thought. I'm listening now. You are, my dear, forever a saint of the holy order of motherhood. That's just beautiful to catch your mistake that quickly. Mom says the interesting thing is that all along she was headed in the right direction, the direction I hoped she would take, and all she needed was a chance to finish her thought. Here I interrupted her and corrected her, and when I shut up, she ended up right where I was hoping she was going to end up. In other words, coming to a conclusion that would be happy and productive, not having the same opinion as the mother, something good. And this is a testimony to your loving and teaching. Again, you cemented your relationship even better than before because you listened and because you admitted when you didn't. You conclude by saying, we could laugh about it later. Feels so much better to just admit when I screw up. It's such a clean way to live. Things just get over and there's no emotional residue hanging around. Who knew that it could really be this easy? I'm just kind of blown away by you two. No kidding. Loving is easier than all the other foolishness we ever do. It's easier to love than to be angry and withdrawn and petulant and stubborn and snotty and right and all that other stuff. It's a cool way to live. New subject. A woman who's new in real love and she's raising several children. And I asked, what is one of your biggest problems at home? She's without pause. She said, dinner. Like with that tone, dinner. Ugh, like being, drugged by a tractor over gravel. I said, like what? She said, fighting all through dinner. Kids slurping soup. They put their knees up on the table, she said. Can you imagine? I mean, it was, like her children were torturing small animals. They pick at each other. They pick up a piece of food and go, what's this? Every mother who's fixed a meal loves to hear that. What is this mystery object? Do we have to eat this? That's what mom hates the most. And I said, try this. No more nagging at dinner. None. Dinner's a sacred time where there's no more yelling, no more fussing, no more sighing, no more criticizing, no nothing. You just serve the food and love them. She said, well, but what if they don't eat their vegetables? I said, then you'll have extra vegetables. And the deer and the birds outside will really like them. Or you can freeze them and you will really like them twice. But you are going to make no comments. 2 days later, I talked to her on the phone. She said, the kids put their knees on the table. She said it with that tone of voice, as opposed to the one I used earlier. They didn't eat all their food. I didn't do any nagging. I said, so how did that go? She said, the kids laughed through dinner. They were talking to me about school and their friends. They were happy. And then I talked to one of the kids later, and they said, what happened to mom? There are some things it's always worth loving, but not everything is worth teaching, really. I had a granddaughter once who ate nothing but pureed baby food with no particles in it, whatever, pureed down to, where you could drink it through a straw, till she was, I think, 4, if I remember. And my son one day said, should I be worried about this? And I said, I'm pretty sure the pureed baby food has all the vitamins and minerals and all that stuff in it because they make it for, little babies. She just happens to be 4. And the first time she goes out on a date when she's, say 16 and they go to order food and she pulls Gerber's pureed baby food out of her purse. she's probably going to notice she's the only person in the restaurant eating pureed baby food. Well, about the time she was 4.5 or so, she just started to eat food. She went. This little girl, they would try to trick her, and they would put little teeny particles of stuff in her pureed food, like little shreds of carrot or whatever, and she would feel it in the back of her throat. She's a tiny little thing. She has a great big mouth and little teeny hands, and she would stick her arm down her throat to grab this little particle, and in the process, of course, throw up all over the place. They finally just gave up and went to pureed food. And she went from pureed food to her next solid food was beef jerky and a candy called hot tamales, I think, if I remember. They didn't fuss at her. They could have turned this into a nightmare for this kid, forced her to eat more solid food, had her throw up all over the place. She would have had a memory of just being tortured when she was little. No, she laughs and jokes about it just as freely as can be. She said, yeah, I remember that. Beef jerky was the first thing. There are some things that aren't worth teaching. They're certainly not worth nagging about, and they're way not worth fighting about. New subject. The magic of beef jerky. A young woman is engaged to a guy who has been confused and angry, and they're just barely learning real love together. And she wrote, my fiance, Joel, had a meltdown yesterday. He said he didn't feel worthwhile. He couldn't possibly do marriage. He couldn't possibly be a husband or father. So I just talked to him about his meltdown again yesterday after the meltdown was over, and how he responded to you texting him. Apparently, I didn't remember this, but I had texted him during the meltdown. He admitted that during the time that you were texting him, he could have stopped and made listening to you a priority, but he chose instead to finish a task that could have waited. In other words, he could have listened to somebody who was loving him and stopped the meltdown, but he chose to do a task instead. And the girlfriend was annoyed that he would pay attention to something other than what matters. So you got the context. This kid was taught from birth by his family that he was worthless. And at the same time, they taught him that if he was ever unhappy, there was something wrong with him. So he was raised badly and taught to blame himself for it. He can't remember any of his childhood, I know this kid, before high school. I ask people all the time when their first consistent memory is. Like when you can remember parts of a day, not just, my first memory was when I was 2. And it was because I was outside at my grandparents' house and a dog came up and bit me. Well, that's a trauma, so that doesn't count as a first memory. When you can remember what life was like, he can't remember his life before high school. Just occasional instances of unfocused rage. And I say, rage from who? And he just goes, I'm not sure. My rage, my parents' rage, just so until high school, all he can remember is rage. The girlfriend says, he said that you have told him that his family influence is much greater than he realizes. You think? They have taught him that he's worthless and deserves abuse. Yeah, and he greatly underestimates it. He'll even defend them, which means, now, I normally don't spend that much time with people in their past, but in this case, this kid really needs to see the abuse, this unfocused rage of his childhood, because if he doesn't see that he was not unconditionally loved as a child, what he'll do is he'll blame himself, which is what they taught him to do anyway. Anytime he was unhappy, it was his fault. He wasn't working hard enough. He wasn't praying enough. He was something. There was always something wrong with him. And that is why sometimes we have to help people stop defending their families, especially if we know their families. If you don't know their family at all, you're pretty much dead. Kids were taught to defend their parents because their parents taught them to do that. Their parents from early on said, I've always loved you, you're the problem. they do it more cleverly than that. Well, the child believes that. It's like the child is brainwashed. So then when they get to be adults, I was loved. And I ask them, okay, we're in a court of law. Prove it. Prove to me that you were loved. And the only evidence they can offer is, well, they told me I was. And I've had people who were beaten, starved, thrown downstairs, sexually abused, everything. And they say, I was loved. How do you know? Because they told me I was. Powerful influence, our childhood. And sometimes we need to understand it just enough to know that we didn't create on our own these fears and these reactions to fears. Not to blame the parents, just so we quit blaming ourselves. New subject. Here's somebody who says, I'm learning more about what it feels like to start out trusting people. Now, I know this person, so yes, you are. Hallelujah. The day has finally come. She continues, my whole life, I've started out doubting or judging everybody. From the beginning, I doubt and judge everybody that I meet, which means I start out defensive in every relationship. I mean, relationship with a new friend, a relationship with a coworker, a relationship with a clerk at the store. Kind of sucks, doesn't it? It makes every interaction painful, fearful, defensive, and awful, and all because of your choice, which, to reinforce the segment just before this, the choice that you were taught, not a choice that you consciously make. She says, trusting means that I get to start out believing that they're doing their best. Hallelujah. You nailed it. That is the right thing to trust. People get confused when I say, trust the people around you. They say, well, but the people around me make mistakes. Yes, and they always will. I don't trust Donna that she will never make a mistake. I don't trust Donna that she will never be unloving. I don't trust Donna that she will always be perfect. No, I trust her that she's doing her best. Do you see the magic in this? If I trust that she's doing her best and she makes a mistake, has she betrayed my trust? No, because she's doing her best and she made a mistake. That's kind of like, what happens when we're mortal. If she does it right, everything's fine. If she doesn't do it right, everything's fine. Whereas if you expect people to be perfect, you're pretty much screwed, and so are they from the beginning, all the time. She concludes, it makes me more open to loving everybody instead of having to find a reason to love people. It feels a lot lighter, easier, way less work, and I find that I'm enjoying everybody more. The angels in heaven are singing, honey. Nice work. New subject. This writer says, I am mad. I'm sure it was written with more anger than that. I'm mad and need to respond to an email from my boss. He requested some information on a batch of chemicals that we'll be using in an experiment, and I sent him the information. His response sounds annoyed and doubting. Sound like the lady just before this? He starts off annoyed and doubting, so he screws up everything everywhere he goes. And I know this guy, so yes, he does. He doubts everybody, and so everybody feels doubted by him, and they're defensive, and he creates the workplace troubles that he hates. So his response sounds annoyed and doubting, even though I gave him exactly what he asked for. I do not like him at all right now, and I know I cannot respond at this time. Well, if you're angry, it's probably a good idea not to write an email. Every once in a while, it's just the wrong time of day, whatever. Somebody writes me something, and I just have the snappiest response. It's so clever. Not so much loving, but it's really clever. And so I'll write one of these little clever emails, just, and then I think, just for fun, I'm going to see what Donna thinks of this. And I send her the email, and she reads the email and just looks over at me and goes, maybe not. And 5 minutes later, I can see why maybe not means don't send this. So here's the boss's email from this woman. The boss says, this information that you sent me is for different lots. The last thing we want to do is give the laboratory conflicting information. I need the exact and correct lot information for the lot intended to be used. This is the lot of chemicals, meaning a batch. So, to the woman who's writing me, first, be positive that you are correct, that you did send him this information. And then, when you're ready, you respond, and you don't say, I don't appreciate your tone of voice. How many emails have started off that way? I can't think of one that started like that and ended well. You say, please check the lot information I sent, and you will find that it gives you the information you need. Do not say, I wish you wouldn't question me. Do not say, I did what you told me. Do not say, I'm offended. Those things never work. You just repeat the information, and he'll look at it and swallow and go, crap, I missed that little, I didn't read the second page. I've done that kind of thing. Oh my goodness, how many times people have written to me and said, I've written to people and said, you didn't respond to my last email, or give me a piece of information I need. And they write back and go, read it again. There it was. I just missed it. New subject. We learned from childhood about the uniform disapproval that followed making mistakes. So what's the almost obvious solution to this? Well, we avoided mistakes. Wrong solution. Mistakes are how we learn. Studies have been done proving that if you take two groups of people and one group of people learns from making mistakes, they intentionally give them problems where they can't solve the problem right. And then they have another group of people that they take along at a really slow pace with really small steps so that they don't make mistakes. They've learned that the group of people that make mistakes learn way faster. Duh. I played the piano for years and years and years. And if you want to learn to play the piano faster, you don't play the same piece over and over. It doesn't help you. You don't just gradually move up in difficulty from, kindergarten to the first grade of piano lessons over a period of 10 years. You may not make any mistakes, but you won't learn anything. You do the hard stuff. You make the mistakes. It's faster. It's actually more fun. It's slower if you learn in a slow, measured way that doesn't involve making mistakes. And here's the irony. You're actually more defensive and afraid. Nuts, huh? New subject. Remember one of our primary questions that we asked at the beginning of the video chat. What would happen if I brought more love into this interaction? Well, let's see. A woman writes, I'm annoyed at my coworker. Drama. You've chosen to be annoyed and make a thing out of it, to make a drama out of it, instead of my coworker made a mistake or my coworker did blank. We choose how we feel. If we're annoyed, we're just reacting, much like a billiard ball being hit by another one. We're not choosing. In order to choose, no fear is required. Can't be afraid while you're choosing. Love is required to make genuine choices. Also, education, knowing the choices that are available. So what would not drama look like? And in your defense, you probably don't know. You've probably been taught all of your life to use drama. Not drama would be simply figuring out how to work with her in the most productive way, without making everything about you, without making everything a drama with, of course, you as the central character in the play that you're writing and directing. You continue, I feel like every little thing has to be perfect for her in order for her to process the data of the information that I give her. But it's possible that I could just be being unloving and choosing not to remember all the things that she's requested that I do in order to make her life easier. you just said it pretty well. It's not that hard to make her happy. She never complains if you give her the information she asks for in the way that helps her do her job best. So what's the solution? The solution here is really bloody easy. Do the dang job as she asked you to do it, which she has a right to do, with no drama. And if she says, well, you didn't give it to me in the right format, well, then honey, give it to her in the right format. Instead of whining that she's picky about it. You're helping her do a job. She's giving you directions. Follow the dang directions. You say, I don't understand why she can't just figure out how to make things work, even if they're not perfect. So it's kind of like I've been under a car working on something and unscrewing bolts, and reached out and asked one of the kids when they were little, hand me a 5/8 inch bolt or wrench. And the kid hands me a 7/16 inch wrench. Well, you're saying, why don't I just figure out how to use a 7/16 to unscrew a 5/8 inch bolt? It's impossible. Can't be done. You're doing that with her. She's giving you really clear, explicit instructions about what to do. And rather than care about her loving, what could I do to be more loving here? You're caring about yourself. Oh, it's inconvenient to you to hand her the right wrench. Excuse me? That's your job. She doesn't have any more peculiarities about how she works than you do. Yes, some of the things that she wants done seem kind of picky. I got it. But some of the things you need are picky. Like in this email, you're being picky about not wanting to do it her way. But see, in this case, it's her job to be done, and it's your job to make her job easier. It's actually your job to do it her way. So do your job. You say, I have so many other things to think about when I'm on these site visits. Okay, I believe you. And the most important thing is how you're going to get the information to her. And then you say that some of these little things, like the format of my photos, seem so insignificant compared to everything else. If I'm going to get it right for her, I'm going to really have to care about her happiness from the bottom of my heart instead of being irritated. I should have read this to start. Yes, you are. Everything will change when you decide you're going to bring more love into this interaction. Everything changes. Good for you. This is from a woman who's been practicing real love for, 3 years or so. She's learned a lot. She used to be endlessly victim-y. The kids were unhappy. Her husband was miserable. She said we were all driving in the car. And it was a pleasant atmosphere so far in the car until I killed it, as my son told me I did. My son and daughter had half an hour of banter. They were joking, put downs, comebacks, comparing. My husband was joining in now and again. And I listened quietly until I decided to make them aware of what they were actually doing. I intervened because it was lasting a while, even though it didn't affect me. Listen slow. You said it was lasting quite a while. Lasting quite a while is not a reason for you to intervene. There is a hint of you feeling left out of the banter. Your husband was joining in. Everybody was having fun. They were just playing around. You're not as good at it as the kids and your husband, because I know you. So you have to ask yourself whether you felt left out and whether finally you got annoyed that you were being left out. You say, some of it was quite funny, actually, but I could see my daughter trying to prove herself as brighter and quicker than my son. Yeah, well, that's what kids do, who is several years older. As the youngest, my daughter gets a kick from that, making herself feel like she's at the same level as her brother and her older sister. She's getting really good at this now and is finally, in her own eyes at least, being recognized by members of the family who play this kind of bantering game. I personally have long experience with playing this game. This was a blood sport for me when I was in high school. And it can be fun, this bantering back and forth, or it can get quite bitter. And it can change from fun to bitter halfway through in 10 seconds. So for you, dear, listening to the banter, it's all about your tone. It really sounds like their bantering is all right. And for those who are listening, I'm not exactly guessing because I got an account about it from one of the kids later. It really wasn't bitter or vicious bantering, and all three were having fun. But as soon as there is any unkindness in it, then people's feelings do begin to be hurt. Or at the very least, somebody's getting a feeling of power, even if the other person isn't yet feeling hurt. So you might say, at the first indication of unkindness, guys, I'm really enjoying hearing you guys banter back there. It's fun hearing you have fun. I love that. It's important you say that. I'm enjoying being with you. I'm enjoying hearing you have fun. Just a word, something to consider. This is still you talking. There's beginning to be a little competition and unkindness between you two. And even if it isn't bothering you now, the pattern has been that pretty soon somebody's feelings are going to be hurt. I'm just suggesting that you be aware of that as you play around. That's all. That's all you say. You don't say stop it. You just say, just be aware. And they'll keep answering. It's all in the tone. If you say that with a bitter tone of voice, as your son already told you, you'll kill it. But if you just go, it's like watching two kids wrestle on the floor. How many times have I seen this in my house? You see two kids wrestling and they're having great fun and they're laughing and goofing, but you're going, one of these kids is bigger than the other one, and the other one's not going to like this in a minute. And I would just reach over and touch them and go, you're getting really close to the crying and telling dad that you got hurt place. So just be aware that you're getting there. You can keep playing, but if one of you gets hurt after this, I'm not going to care. And I've told them that. And then when somebody gets hurt, they just sit there looking stuck. I got hurt. Dad tells me he doesn't care now because I brought it on myself. What do I do? They just need to be aware of the consequences of their behavior. That's what you're doing. Just teaching, loving, not controlling. Dang it. You continue. My son was quite unhappy that I said anything at all about their game. So now I've reflected on it. Was I wrong to say something? Considering that I waited like 30 minutes, my other option could have been to make a mental note of it and talk about it at the next family meeting. You just said it had been 30 minutes. There is only one reason to bring that up, and that's to make yourself right. So I needed to stop it because it had been going on 30 minutes and you'd been feeling left out. You didn't say that it was getting bitter, only that it had been going on for a long time, like I talked about earlier. And remember, I know you. You would tend to feel left out. So your tone would have tended to be critical and condescending, if not outright victimy. You have to be rigorously honest about what your motive was for speaking. You do. I'm not going to tell you. And even then, you have to figure out whether your tone was critical. Then, if it worsens into more unkindness, you say, now we're getting to the place where it's being unkind. And now I'm getting uncomfortable. Notice I said, I'm getting uncomfortable. You don't say, stop it. You must be aware of your own self, though. Is there bantering bothering only you? If you're the only one being bothered, you might have a problem. If it's only you and they're just having fun and you're just getting tired of it, then you pretty much need to learn to shut up and deal with your own jealousy. Unless you simply can't deal with the bitterness. If there's too much bitterness, then you might get involved, or you might recognize that it's about your own past pain, and not about them. You say, my son was annoyed with me. I listened and I lovingly admitted that I didn't consider all my options. I could have taught him about his angry reaction, but I decided to just leave it alone. Shall I say something later in the day? Only to ask him if he noticed that he was irritated at you when he spoke and said that you killed the mood. Only ask him if he noticed. Don't tell him he was wrong. But if you were even the slightest bit irritated when you talk to them, you have to admit that too. Notice, there's a lot of details in this particular discussion. What really matters is, where's the love? Was there love here? What happens if I bring more love to it? Or I choose to be loving because then my children will feel more loved and be less likely to be bitter in their bantering. It's always about the love. It's never about a particular solution. A woman called me describing an ongoing relationship with a truly terrible business partner. Unreliable, argumentative, irresponsible. She had spent many months agonizing over his non-performance, and he's her business partner. I said, you've tried to get him to become more responsible on a great many occasions. Is that correct? Yes. I said, then you're finished. Get out of the partnership now. She said, well, but it will cost us a fair bit to dissolve the partnership and it will be messy. No kidding. And will it be messier now if you break it up, or will it be messier in a year when you break it up? Oh, well, it'll be messier in a year, she said. I said, and more costly? Yes, she said. And you'll have suffered another year of hell. Yes. She got the point. When something's not working and you've nagged somebody to death and they don't change their behavior, there's nothing more to talk about. And we keep talking. Well, I'm going to quit if you. What's the purpose of the if you? He's already demonstrated he's never going to do this. Ever. He's not going to change. So why do you stay? It's miserable. It's not working. The business isn't succeeding. You get out. What did she do? She quit. Oh, bless her. She discovered that there were some skills that he had, a few, that she needed in order to dissolve the business from a bookkeeping and computer standpoint. He wouldn't help. Wow. Shocking. He didn't do his job to make the business succeed. He wouldn't do his job to make the business dissolve. Same stupidness as when he was in the business. And I said, and you're trying to get him to help again? So who becomes the fool when she keeps batting her head against the same wall? She got it. It's silly. And this isn't just about business. It's about love. This whole process of being in this business thing with her partner had depleted her completely. She was just a shell of a person as a result of trying to transform him into a different person. They had a great idea together, but that doesn't mean they can do it together. So I said, just get the dang help. Find somebody he's the only person on earth who has these skills. Well, no, but he knows the business. So I suggest you bang your head against the wall a few more times and see how that feels. Pay for the help. Find a friend. Do something. She had somebody who could replace what she needed from him. She found somebody to do that within, I think, 2 hours. No kidding. And somebody she really likes and somebody she'll probably do business with in the future. She's free. No entanglement. No more drain on the love that she feels in her life. She's beginning to feel the love that she'd been getting all along. She's been getting loved by a number of people for some time, and she couldn't feel it because she was constantly embroiled in entanglements like this. Now she's freer, and she's beginning to feel loved. It matters. It matters the choices that we make. Here's a mother who said, I overheard an interaction between my husband and my 3-year-old son today. My husband said, to my son, "Can I give you a hug?" And my son answered and said, "Well, I don't need one, but if you want one, you can hug me." I find the wisdom of children so disarming. New subject, a woman, Lucy, who has controlled people all of her life, which is just her way of dealing with pain. Her mother did it before her, and she's begun to date a guy named Mark. She says, "This morning, Mark and I were talking on the phone, and the way I spoke scared him, and I want to help him not be afraid." Now, remember, I know both of these people, and Lucy has been controlling people all of her life, like all the time. So when she says, "We were talking on the phone, and for some reason, gee, I can't imagine why, the way I spoke scared him, and I want to help him not be afraid." Denial times 2 already in one sentence. So the way I spoke scared him. She didn't say, "I'm responsible for being controlling, and my controlling scared him." No, skip that. "And now I want to help him not be afraid." So I'm going to translate this into English for you. The way I spoke scared him, and I want to help him not be afraid. How that translates is this: I tried to control him, and now I want to control him so he's not afraid while I'm controlling him. That's what she's saying. No kidding. And when people have been doing it for a lifetime, they don't see it. So to her, listen slowly. You scare a lot of people when you speak. Like a lot. You have a pattern of it. I've talked to you about this before. You get a tone that lets people know that they're going to do things your way, and that their opinions don't matter, and you don't hear the tone, but they do. And so you're puzzled why they react to you the way that they do. They come across as uncooperative. No, they're afraid of your tone, and you don't see it, so it's all confusing to you. So far, nearly every time somebody has described your speaking in a tone where I could then either hear or read what you said, you had spoken in a tone. In other words, I've had the opportunity of speaking to, a dozen or more people who have interacted with you so that I could hear what you actually said and then compare it to what you tell me that you said. And it turns out that you are controlling every time, which means that when you say, "Gee, I don't know what went wrong," I believe you, but you were controlling. In short, your partner, Mark, is almost certain to be right, because not one of the people I talked to made up your tone. You really had it. So now you have a choice. You can defend yourself and be right, in which case you're quickly going to be alone. You'll lose him. He'll be gone. He'll get tired of it like everybody else does. Or you can listen to him and learn from what he has to say. She continues, "He then talked in a way that implied that how I was speaking was wrong. He didn't believe me that I was feeling peaceful." Me neither. I know both of you. I know Mark. Mark is the kind of guy who would not make up you're not being peaceful. I'm not taking sides. I'm trying to help you. Mark is not the kind of guy who's feeling all happy and peaceful and then would just turn on you and say, "You're being controlling," just for fun, to see what you do. Impossible. So he was right. You say later in the conversation, "I said something else that scared him and he attacked me." Gee, I wonder why. You didn't hear him the first 10 times. "I momentarily felt it and was tempted to react, but I knew that it wouldn't work. So I stayed quiet and remembered what was true. I'm better recognizing when Mark gets scared and he doesn't know it. He unknowingly analyzes and critiques me. Am I capable of helping him when this happens? And if so, how?" We'll get to Mark someday, but right now this isn't about him. It's about you. It's about your not defending your tone, which is killing you and killing all the relationships. Second email, which I must admit was surprising. So she wrote me after I sent that one, and she said, I think I know the tone that you're speaking of. And I said, I doubt it, because she never admits to being wrong easily. She said, I know the tone you're speaking of, but this time I wasn't using that tone. At which point I literally laughed out loud. I said, well, of course, it's like the old, I know that I have been wrong, but, and then nobody can ever fill in a specific. It's like people who say, well, I'm not perfect. Wow, how gracious of you to admit. Or I have made mistakes, but they can't name one, ever. You say, I was describing to Mark what I was feeling because he asked, and Mark said he was scared early in our conversation before I spoke in the tone talked about. If Mark was already scared, how could he be clear enough to determine that I wasn't feeling peaceful? I didn't think that was possible. Oh, honey, this is brilliant real love over analysis, and it's just all trash. You're defending yourself. That's what you're doing. The subject here isn't him. It's you. I know you both. It's like I could finish the conversation. You say, I can't get past the feeling there's a misunderstanding here. No blame. No, there's lots of that. I may be at fault due to poor communication or selection of words. No, that's not the problem. I'm not sure. I just can't reconcile how I felt at the time with you and him both telling me that I felt something different. I just can't see what you're talking about. I believe you. Really. I am compassionately telling you, I believe you when you say you don't see it. But as long as you think that you always know how you feel, especially when you're beginning a new relationship with all that confusion, you will be unteachable. You say, I want to, but I just don't think I can take any more teaching right now. So first you control, then you get angry, and then you get confused, and then you say, I'm going to run away because I can't take any more teaching. All I'm hearing is, Lucy, you don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong. Mark got scared, and it's your fault. Yeah. And this is what your daughter does. She distorts everything that you said later, and you're distorting what I said. I didn't say that you made him afraid. You've just made all that part up. But now you said that you can't take any more teaching, so you've made it impossible to teach you. And you do this a lot. You bully and control. If anybody says something, you bully and control more. If they continue, then you say you're hurt and you run away. You say, finally, probably my PTSD. Growing up, I couldn't do anything right. Even the volume at which I breathed was wrong. Everything I did annoyed my mother and still does. It was a constant battle with her. She never believed me. So, my dear, oddly, you respond by bullying and controlling other people like you're doing now. You say, I'm willing to learn. You know this, that I've learned a lot. Yeah, I know you love me, and that's why you teach me. Even if I start with my feet firmly planted, there's a limit to how much I can be told. How much I can be told that I'm wrong before I get knocked down. Today, I just got more being told that I was wrong than I could take. Probably more than I was capable of taking. She wrote a third email and a fourth email, and we went back and forth, and finally, she heard it. She'd had a tone from the very beginning, and looking back, she could see that she had a tone. She could see that she was controlling, but she couldn't see it right off. And what happens in relationships is this. Somebody speaks with a tone, the other person feels afraid, they defend themselves, then the tone and the controlling gets worse, and now we have nothing but reacting tones. This is why it is often so useful to have a loving parent, to have a wise person, to have a coach, to have somebody from the outside who can say, honey, that thing that you're 100% sure isn't a tone, it's called a tone. You're being controlling. And I know you're sure you're not, but I'm going to sit right here with you and hold your hand until you can see that it's controlling. And she did, and they're doing beautifully. And I got to tell you, the fact that she went from absolute denial of her tone to recognizing it, seeing it, doing something about it, losing the tone, which she did over not just the same day, but has continued to lose it over succeeding days. That is a miracle. And baby, I got to tell you, I really admire you for persisting and listening and being taught, even when you swore you couldn't take one more bit of teaching. You listened. That is trust and courage, and I admire it. You're an example of what can happen when you choose to be loving, when you see what happens when you bring more love to an interaction than anything else. Way to go. It works. Congratulations. We'll see you in a week.